Welcome to Food Talk for Health. Here is your host, Tonia King.
My guest today is nutrition and fitness expert, Dr. John Lewis. Tell us about some of the fads and nutrition myths that we've been hearing so much about.
Oh goodness, where to begin? I think the most curious one to me is, and of course, it's changed. I think Bob Atkins wrote his first book in 1972. So it's a combination of the idea that humans need to eat all of this protein, basically making sugar or carbohydrate or saccharides. Those are, in my view, synonyms depending on, just a general discussion of carbohydrates, depending on which ones we're talking about, can be radically different. But basically making carbohydrate out to be this evil thing. And then fast forward to, the last maybe 5 to 10 years. Maybe you remember. I don't remember when I first heard the term carnivore related to a human. And so the thing, it's kind of the same thing, but it just gets wrapped in different marketing or different terminology. But to me, it's just completely preposterous. And I'll address a couple of these myths, maybe in some sort of sequential order, not necessarily in order of importance. But first of all, related to protein, you and I could go to any hospital in the United States right now, and we would be hard pressed. In fact, I'd bet you all the money I have in my account, in my bank, we would not find one person hospitalized in the United States with a protein deficiency. That's unheard of in the United States. So this idea that Americans are already eating too much protein, the idea that Americans need to continue shoveling more and more protein into their mouth is a total myth. But yet you hear all of these so-called talking head experts constantly pushing more and more protein. I don't get it. The average American is not protein deficient. If you're talking about some, very poor third world country where people are starving to death, sure, protein would definitely be an issue for those folks. But we have something like 70 to 75 to 80% of Americans are either overweight or obese. Give me a break with people, starving to death in this country, like being protein deficient. It's a total myth.
So is it a difference between men and women?
Well, interestingly enough, if you can believe the CDC, if it still has any credibility at this point, the CDC, the CDC has been collecting. It's called the NHANES data set, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's been collected since the Actually, I think it's about 40. It's about 40 years old this year. It's around 85, 86 was when that started. And what the NHANES is, it's the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. It's taken basic information from people for these last several decades. And a lot of that information, of course, includes dietary information. And a lot of that information includes body characteristics. So they've been tracking overweight obesity for all these years. Well, interestingly, in the last data collection that was released to the public, men are now more obese than women. That's the first time that had happened. And this goes all the way back to like the 1960s, which was obviously way before NHANES was collected. But from data that we have going back to, I think, about 1962, when body mass index could be calculated at least through some sort of secondary analysis, if not a primary analysis. But back then, you had about 10% of men and about 15% of women were obese. And that's a definition according to a body mass index of 30 or greater. That's your height relative to your weight. Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward to around 2019, I think that was when the last set of data were released. And now it's like 44% of men and 42% of women who are obese. Just staggering numbers over that, roughly half-century period. It's the first time that now men are actually more obese than women. That had never happened before. But when you think about that, just in basically a half-century period of time, it is staggering how obesity has just run rampant over our country. And why is that?
Right. And there you go, thinking about it's the food that we're eating
Absolutely.
or that we're not eating.
Or that we're not eating. Exactly. So what has happened to us since the 1960s? We had, the so-called Green Revolution that was supposed to be this concept of using all these pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers to create this wealth of food production, which I guess to some degree worked. But on the other hand, what did it do to our soil, to our water, to our air? It created a lot of pollution. It caused the soil to change dramatically, where now our food doesn't have the same nutritional quality or value as it did, say, 100 years ago. And so we have certainly with these large commodity crops like corn and wheat and soy, we have tons of food that's available, but it's just not the same quality of nutrition anymore. And then, of course, what also happened around that time? Fast food, right? I mean, that
Right.
was the start of fast food. McDonald's. I like to make a joke. Darth Vader's not the evil empire. McDonald's is like Darth Vader pales in comparison to what McDonald's has done, and all the companies that came after it that created this whole phenomenon of now people, they don't even think about food, right? They just drive through somewhere, they grab something fast, they're hungry, they need to satisfy that urge of a hunger, and so they just shovel something in as rapidly as possible, and boom, they're done, and keep going on to their next thing. And so they don't even think about food. They don't even think about the importance of what it is that they're putting into their mouths and how that drives all these different chronic diseases. The other thing that obviously has happened is technology. We're certainly the victim of our own worst devices in terms of all of this technological convenience. The sad statistics about obesity are very comparable to the sad statistics about physical activity. Now it's something like 80% of Americans are completely sedentary. Like what? Like literally 8 out of 10 people just basically sit around all day in a building doing nothing.
Well, so
Yep.
Dr. John, how do you get them to move? How do you get everybody to eat right? What can you recommend?
Great question. So, the fallacy of New Year's resolutions, like for most people, you have to take baby steps. I don't think the average person doesn't have the mentality of making like a cold turkey fast switch, right? So
Right.
you have to position people to say, okay, if you are overweight, God forbid you're obese, you have diabetes, or at least you have metabolic syndrome, you have some form of cardiovascular disease. So let's just take it one day at a time. What's one behavior that you can change? And I believe psychologists say that if you can do something 17 times in a row, whether that's 17 times in 17 days or, certain whatever segment or component of time that is, but if you can do something 17 times, then it can become a habit. Up until that point, it's still iffy whether or not you will incorporate that as a habit. So the easiest thing I think people can do I'll address this answer with two answers. I'll address the question with two answers. On the diet nutrition side, just do one thing. What would that be? Well, I think the most common or favorite drink of Americans is coffee, and right behind that is tea. And then you have this explosion of all of these, energy drinks, all these different types of drinks that have questionable ingredients in them at best. So give up all of that stuff and just drink water. Just drink good filtered water. If you don't like bland, no taste water, splash a little bit of lemon or lime juice in it. Just start drinking water, because we know that dehydration, especially once you hit middle age and then going forward, is a significant contributor to neurodegeneration, to bone disease, to liver disease, to kidney disease, to cancer. So if you can tackle the water issue, that's one thing that people ought to be able to do fairly easily. I'm not
Yeah.
saying anything is easy, but that's just one
No.
thing.
But that is easy compared to having to go out and buy something.
That's right, exactly. On the physical activity side, unless you are bound to a wheelchair, you have some lower body extremity functional issue, almost anybody should be able to go for a 5 or a 10-minute walk. If you've been if you're that person who you graduated high school and that was the last time you were in a PE or a gym class and you've done nothing since, and maybe that's been years or decades ago, you don't need to go out and spend $200 on a sophisticated pair of Nikes or something. Just have a decent pair of shoes that are comfortable and start walking for 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's in your backyard, in your parking lot, in your neighborhood, whatever. And do that every single day. Don't tell me you're too busy that you can't take 5 or 10 minutes and start walking, and then slowly over every couple of days or every third day or something, add 2 or 3 more minutes onto that. And by the end of 60 or 90 days, you'll surprise yourself. You'll be up to an hour. And then at that point, you should have a little bit more of a functional capacity to now start weight training. But again, drinking water and starting out in a walking program should be two of the easiest things that just about anybody can do.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, exactly. Don't solve all the world's problems overnight. Don't go from, being morbidly obese and sedentary to trying to, compete in a bodybuilding contest or run in a marathon the next day. That doesn't happen. But at least simple, effective steps that you could take to start the process of improving your health. I mean, let's face it, we have two primary characteristics in this life. We have time. We can't do anything about the passage of time. And then we have our health. And we can do a whole lot about our health if we're willing to put health as a priority, as the first priority. It doesn't matter how much money you have or what home you live in or what car you drive or the jewelry or any other possession. If you don't have your health,
you don't have anything.
What do all those things matter? What do they even mean to you if you can't enjoy them and if you can't live a high quality of life? So for me, if you don't prioritize your health, you're totally missing it.
So tell me a little bit about your research with dairy and women's health.
Well, I mean, I would love to tell you that I conducted some studies, looking at the impact of dairy on health. Unfortunately, most of my research doesn't involve that at all. But what I can tell you from the research is that now here's one of the biggest myths that drives me absolutely crazy, and that is we need cow's breast fluid to be optimally healthy, especially for women. Women have just been so bombarded by this idea of calcium for prevention of what? Osteoporosis, right? Mm-hmm. We've heard it a million times. And I guess, I don't know what happened maybe about a decade ago. You don't see as many, maybe due to the shifting dynamics with legacy media versus social media, but I certainly don't see as many dairy milk commercials on TV anymore. Not that I'm such a big TV watcher, but occasionally I watch some TV and I don't see it like I used to. But still, the dairy industry is out there promoting this idea of drinking their product, their main product, milk, or eating cheese or yogurt or ice cream, whatever else is made from milk, and how that's providing the calcium that people and especially women need to prevent osteoporosis. Here's the fallacy. There are a couple of related to this. Number one, the epidemiological observational research shows that the countries that consume the most dairy, guess what? They have the highest rates of osteoporosis. How ridiculous is that? So the United States, Norway, Sweden, all these countries that are eating copious, ridiculous amounts of dairy food have the highest rates of osteoporosis. Hello, dairy industry. Your message is nonsense. Why is that? Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, calcium. Yes, of course, we need calcium for our bone health. I'm not denying that. That's not the message here. What is true, though, is that when you consume dairy food, you're getting a lot of calcium, but you're getting very little magnesium. And magnesium is very important in the role of protecting our bones, making sure that our bones have the proper minerals that it needs to be functional, to be strong, to prevent osteopenia, to prevent osteoporosis. So that's one issue. The second issue is, yes, of course, again, dairy has all of this calcium. What does it also have along with it? A lot of protein. Well, unfortunately, the body, when we consume a lot of protein in the presence with that calcium, the body is going to go through this shift in its pH level. And with a lot of protein, you have a slight shift toward acidity. So in the body's quest to remain or maintain homeostasis, that's of course our key element, if you will, of survival, being in homeostasis. What does it do? It actually strips off some of the minerals from the bones because they are positive cations to go back toward alkalinity. So in that process, it's actually taking off calcium from the bones to achieve that. And again, this is nothing the dairy industry will ever talk about. I mean, this is science. This is not my opinion. This is actually how the body works in terms of restoring homeostasis to get it back to mostly a basic, just slightly alkaline state. So these are the reasons why the calcium that you get from dairy food is not your best source of calcium. The calcium that you should be getting, and especially for you women, you want to get from things like green leafy vegetables, because the calcium from the green leafy vegetables, also those vegetables have high levels of magnesium. Or something like sesame seeds. That's another very excellent source of calcium because, again, it doesn't have the level of protein in it that would have a negative impact on your alkalinity or your acidity status. So this idea that you should be just consuming all of this milk, all of this cheese from cows' breast fluid is just complete nonsense. The science does not back up that message. And again, I don't know why. I don't know about you. I don't know if you've noticed this lack of advertising from the dairy industry over the last few years, but something definitely happened. Now, there was related to weight loss, not related to the osteoporosis story. I know for a fact that there was one study. This is actually the one study that I remember the dairy industry promoting a few years ago. So there was a study conducted in either mice or rats. I forget which rodent that they used, but they looked at giving these rodents milk and then whether or not that had some impact on weight. And so they showed in this rat study, and I don't remember it. I'd have to go back and actually read it to refresh my memory of all the different details of the study design. But for some reason, they actually showed that these rats lost weight consuming some particular type of dairy food. And so the dairy industry created this gigantic, and I don't know if you remember it, but they created this gigantic marketing advertising campaign around the idea that if you drank milk, you would lose weight. And of course, again, they're targeting women mostly. Well, fortunately, in one instance of where the government actually did its job correctly, the FTC made the dairy industry pull that advertising. They said, this is garbage. You're trying to, promote this idea that you can drink milk and lose weight. It's based on one rat study or one mouse study. It's basically nonsense. So that was the last big major advertising marketing campaign that I remember the dairy industry doing. But I'm sure you remember, like many years ago, these slogans, got milk.
Got milk. Yeah, I remember
Nature's
that.
perfect food.
Yeah.
They had all of these, beautiful celebrities with the milk mustache.
Right.
I mean, they spent, if not billions, at least millions of dollars over decades of promoting this constant message about how if you didn't consume dairy food, your hair would fall out, your teeth would fall out, and your bones would fall apart. I mean, I remember I went to public school my entire 12 years of primary education. The only nutrition education, if you will, I'm putting my fingers in quotes for the audio, but the only information that I got up until I was a sophomore in high school, I got a little bit of nutrition information in a health class. But I remember in my second grade homeroom, a poster of a cow. Again, dairy industry propaganda. I always remember this cow with a happy face. And again, it's this message about you got to drink your milk to have healthy bones and teeth and hair and all that. Total propaganda. I mean, again, there's nothing scientifically to support that message. Now, if you're starving, I mean, if you live in an area where you can't grow food and maybe the best you can do is have a cow and, raise her and drink her milk because you have a limited amount of ability to grow other food, that's a totally different matter. And I'm not talking about extreme examples like that. I'm talking about all of us living in the land of abundance, the country of abundance, where you don't have to drink cow's breast fluid to get any kind of nutrition. And oh, by the way, humans are the only species that drink the breast fluid of another mammal after childhood. Why do we do that? There's no biological justification to do that. That's also another myth. Why?
It's all marketing.
It's all marketing. Exactly. There's no other. Why don't you see mice drinking elephant's milk? Or why don't you see bears drinking rhino's milk? I mean, why do we do that? No other mammal requires the breast fluid of another mammal to be healthy. It's a total myth. It makes no sense.
We are talking with nutrition and fitness expert, Dr. John Lewis. Do you have a website where we can find out more information?
Absolutely. Our primary website is drlewisnutrition.com. That website is really the culmination of my career, actually. We didn't even talk about my research that I conducted at the University of Miami while I was still a professor there, but it's based on polysaccharides from aloe vera and rice bran that not just women, but men, all of us can benefit from. And I'm very proud of all the work that my colleagues and I have done that created this flagship product we call Daily Brain Care. But that website is loaded with information about the product, about the research, more about my career and what I do. We also are on all the typical social media channels as well under the Dr. Lewis Nutrition handle. So if anybody has any question about nutrition or dietary supplementation or exercise, you can contact us through our website, through the email or phone number, or any way that I can help people. I'm just here to be a vehicle of a message to help people through nutrition and through these polysaccharides, because they can make such a difference in everyone's life. And I'm happy to share that with anybody who wants to listen.
Thanks so much for all your information about your research and nutrition.
You've been listening to Food Talk for Health with Tonia King. Thanks for joining us. Eat well to be well.
Thanks for listening to Food Talk for Health today. We'd love your support. Subscribe if you can and write a review. Food Talk for Health is produced by Creative Voice and Media. Thanks for listening.